What's up, y'all? This Lil W of Slab OGs TV back at again of the Slab History 101. Man, like I said, man, I'm gonna keep on continuing doing these Slab History 101s. You know, they pretty fun to me, just doing my research on them and, you know, discovering stuff I didn't really necessarily know. Today we're gonna kind of talk about the origin of the slab. And what I mean by that is, you know, some of the cars that they rode in during that first generation, you know what I'm saying? And I couldn't really just put it into one car, you know what I'm saying? Because it's really like a era of cars, you know, the A-type body style of the 73 to 77 Buick Regals, Centuries, Monte Carlos, Cutlasses, Pontiac Grand Prix, Pontiac Le Mans. Those are kind of the cars that they was riding in them early days of the slab. And as a lot of y'all know already, well, some of y'all might not know, there are some wheels that were made in 1978, 1979, you know what I'm saying, that had the stamp and of the date of manufacturing on the back of the wheels. I know it's like, I know one person that has like one wheel that, you know, that has that stamp on there, but that's pretty much the same era, you know, towards the tail end of these cars that pretty much the elbows was pretty much made. As y'all already know, times was hard back in them days, you know, when everybody started to ride the elbows. You know, this is during the crack epidemic, you know, so people wasn't getting the wheels that came off of the Cadillacs, Tornados, and I think some Jags too. They wasn't getting those wheels from those cars and actually riding the cars. Y'all have already been watching the channel. Y'all already know what Slab OG TV about, and most of y'all know the history. You know, so back in the day, they had to kind of take those wheels. They had to take those wheels off those Cadillacs and off those Tornados. So I said all that to say that basically the cars that they was putting the wheels on wasn't those type of cars, you know. So I always talk to OGs, people that just older than me, even by like 10 years, that remember the 80s, remember the 90s, and remember the 70s. They always say, oh yeah, I remember my grandma, my mom, or my dad, they had a 74 Buick Regal, they had a 74 Monte Carlo Cutlass or something like that, that same A-type body style. So those cars were very prevalent during them times, you know, during the early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. So those cars were, you know, they was pretty much all around the hood, you know. And by during these times, it being the crack epidemic, unemployment low, you know what I'm saying, the all-time poverty in the hood, you know, during these times that we all know, heard of, you know, a lot of these guys that was putting these cars together during the early 80s, mid 80s, a lot of them just didn't have money like that. So what you'll hear from OGs is, well, man, we used to cut our T-tops or cut our own Hollywood tops in our cars, you know, in the front yard. This was like a known thing, you know, that's what they did, you know. If they want to make their wheels longer, putting drill tips on the end of it, you know, a lot of that stuff was kind of like do it yourself. And y'all done heard from all the OGs that I done interviewed from the 80s, whether it be Stefan, Melvin Terry, JC, Duck, Top Dog, all those guys that rode in the 80s, they'll pretty much say like, in the beginning of the 80s to the mid 80s to like 85, 86, that, hey man, we ain't just necessarily have interior done. We ain't necessarily had the paint. That just wasn't during that time. That wasn't what it was. It was more so about the car, you know. And like I said, these cars being 5 to 10 years before people started riding elbows like that in the city, you could pretty much find any one of those cars that I listed in the early 80s, mid 80s in perfect condition. So you didn't necessarily need to do all the extra stuff, or people didn't even hear about it during that time, changing the inside up on different color or matching the paint on the interior or repainting it another color. Like, people wasn't normally doing that because they was doing it themselves in their front yard. One thing I would really want to know and kind of find out as I do OGs from the 80s interviews, who actually started putting 6x9s in the back seat. That's one thing. If y'all know in the comments you're a little bit older, you know, that was your generation, the 70s, the 80s, and you kind of know where did that start from, man, drop it in the comments, because that's something I'm kind of curious about. So for everybody that don't know, that's not from Houston, a lot of these cars that I've listed, that 73 to 77 model of A-type cars, a lot of those guys would, like I said, cut Hollywood tops and cut T-tops in the roof and pretty much take out the whole back seat and, you know, put 6x9s back there. And one thing I didn't mention either, they weren't necessarily changing interior of cars, but they were changing seats of cars. You know, try to find the most closest car that you can to your type of interior, and, you know, try to get the Recaro seats or try to get the PMD seats. You know, it was certain seats that they would try to get. Shit, I've heard some OGs say, man, it didn't even have to match as long as I had the seats in there. So, you know, that was just the kind of like the mindset back then, you know, just getting these specific parts, these specific, you know, having French antennas in your car, having curb stoppers at the bottom of your car, you know, just like little accents that, you know, just added to the car, putting badges on the front grills. A lot of the guys from back then in the early 80s used to put badges on the front grills, you know, just like little subtle stuff. That was, you know, technically their definition of the slab. Or even having a car pinstripe, you know, it was like little stuff that they would do to their cars that they would make it to where it's just like, damn, that's a clean car coming down. That's why that second generation, you know, them were the cars they seen. It took more detail, you know, to make their cars clean back then, because it pretty much was a factory car on some nice wheels, you know. So they would do, like I said, put the PMDs, the Rick Ricaros, Hollywood top, French antennas, all that. Maybe paint the brake calipers, pinstripe the side, pinstripe the back, engrave a name into the back of the trunk. You know, those were the things that, you know, make up the slab of today, you know, when it comes to detail. So, man, we always got to salute the OGs before us. I know a lot of people look at some cars, because there's a lot of people in my generation and even the generation before me, like the early 2000s, you know, that was riding in. You know, they probably wouldn't put one of these type cars together. You know, it might be too big, or like the word we like to use nowadays, soulful. You know, my car might be soulful. But man, that's the true essence of the slab. When you talk to some OGs, like I always shout out to Byron Mack from the Northside, you know, he always talk about, you know, that's the ultimate slab, you know, those type of Regals, because that was type of Regals, Centuries, MCs, Cutlasses, Monte Carlos, all that. He always said that those type of cars wasn't slabs; those were lowriders. If you in that era of the 70s, 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, break it down in the comments. Why did y'all call them lowriders? That's always interesting to me. It always throw me off when an OG always say lowrider. I can kind of get where they coming from when they come to it, because I might describe a 77 Buick Regal and they might say, oh, well, you can't put no bumper kit on that because then that's what make it a slab. You know, you take the bumper kit off, that's what make it a lowrider, you know, because a lot of their cars back then, it's supposed to be nowadays too, but specifically back then, that's one thing. Another thing they used to do, you know, heat the springs, drop the springs, and drop it all the way down to the ground to, you know, make it resemble a lowrider. Now, after these cars started to hit the scene, you know, 83, 84, 85, that's when you started to see, you know, the Park Avenues, the Cadillac Fleetwoods. That's when you started to see a lot more of that, because that was kind of like a whole nother generation that was coming up that seen it from the other, you know, first generation. And that's not to say that during these model cars, the 83, 84, 85, that it wasn't no Fleetwoods out there, that it wasn't no Coupe de Villes out there, because it was. It's just that these cars was like, those were the cars that you wanted at the time, you know what I'm saying? These was the cars that they was fixing up, because you could do a lot more stuff to them. You know, you couldn't really, you can, but you can't really put like Ricks in a Fleetwood. You know, it don't look right, because Ricks go with a Hollywood top, it go with a T-top, it go with a specific body style. You could take out the back seat of a Fleetwood or a Coupe de Ville and put 6x9s in there, but you know, with these cars, you know, an MC, a 77 MC, you know, that T-top come off, that Hollywood top come off, and you see the Ricks and you see the 6x9s all in the back seat, you know, it hit a little different, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's just a salute to that first stage, that first generation of the slab riders. A lot of people don't ever give them their credit. A lot of them really ain't took no pictures like that. So it's a lot of cars that we really ain't never seen that we always hear stories about. It's a select few cars that you might see during that era, but for the majority part, you're not really gonna find just too many pictures. You know, back then they really wasn't thinking about taking no pictures, and later on down in life, like it's gonna be somebody who like me make a YouTube and talk about these cars. So man, it's really just a video just to salute that first generation. And they taste, they the ones that put the class into the slab, you know what I'm saying? So man, salute to the originators. Oh, another thing I want to say, I want to see a lot more young niggas put old schools together, because me and my other partner was sitting there thinking about it. We was like, well, damn, how many young niggas do we know that got a bunch of old schools? So, man, I challenge, in 2025, I challenge a lot of the young niggas, you know, you got your paper, you know, you got your hustle game up. Man, I challenge y'all to put an old school together. You know, that'd be interesting to see, you know, kind of like the new generation go back to it. You know, you can still have fun with your new school, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't gonna lie, man, you gotta put your one bad old school together, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's what it is. Origin of the slab game. Salute to the OGs, salute to the originators. Man, this Lil WB, Slab OGs TV, we out.